first author event, and really, we've been talking about it for a long time. But when I reached out to you all, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to shoot my shot. And then when you all were like, reach out to our publicist, I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. So then we're like, we're doing our first group with Christina Lauren. We should have like worked our way up, but here we are. So we've already done a group holidays discussion just with our group, and we loved it. So we have a few questions. How did it become a book of the month? That's our biggest question.
That is a great question. So, you know, book of the month it's a really big deal because it's a huge community. You get your books into a ton of readers' hands. And, you know, I think it was something that we had always hoped we would get chosen for. It feels like a good audience for us, but this one it really did well. It like seemed like the perfect pick for them, and readers really needed that sort of seasonal magic this year, I think. So we got the email, and it was actually really funny because it wasn't super clear that it was, because it goes through foreign rights because they print their own edition. So anytime a publisher prints their own version of it, it has to go through foreign rights. So we got this email from our foreign rights person, and we're like, is this book of the month, or is it like a book of the month club for some other thing? And it was like seriously 8 hours before we knew whether we could be like super excited. And then once it was confirmed, we were just like really happy. So
we were ecstatic. It's like such a big deal for an author to get picked. So
yeah, it was really exciting.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome. And I'm sure it is because our group, I mean, we're a relatively small one. We have a little over 8,000 people. Wow. But there was a ton of people who hadn't read you before, but then read this one. And now they're like going through and getting Josh and Hazel, the Unhoneymooners, you know, all of that. And so
I love it.
My heart is like the Grinch right now. It's just exploding. I mean, as a writer, that's all you want is for people to read your book. So
yeah,
yes.
It's really true.
Let's see. Some more questions. Now, I know you all are friends and then decided to write together, but how does that writing process work, being two people?
So Lo and I, we actually, what's really funny is that we met and we kind of knew each other. I had to do a Q&A today, and it like the weirdness of our situation sort of hit me all over again, that we were not best friends when we first started writing. It like we met, we got along really well. We were like, let's like write a little short story together. We did that. And it kind of came so natural that we were like, let's write a book together. And it was like, there wasn't even that much thought put into it. And then our friendship just kind of grew out of that. And so we put just as much time into our friendship. We truly are best friends. She is my favorite person in the world, that I'm not like related to or gave birth to, or, you know. So we put as much work into our working relationship as we do our friendship. And so normally we see each other a lot more, but, you know, COVID has made that harder. We had got really spoiled where the beginning of last year, I think we were seeing each other like
every other week
or something. So normally we always outline together. Always. We did that for this book because we were together for the release of Holidays. Mm-hmm. We like stayed away from everybody, and then we rented a house in St. George because everything has to be virtual. We needed to be together for a lot of those things. So we did that, but then we ended up having to re-outline the book that we're writing now, and that we had to do over Zoom, which is not something we've really ever done before. There's just sort of magic that happens when we're bouncing ideas, you know, back and forth, and it takes a couple days. It's not something we just sit down for an hour and go, all right, done.
All done.
Yeah. So we're very, very different. We have like very different ways of writing, like our processes. So we don't write together. Sometimes people are like, do you sit in one room and just, you know, type? No. We decide who's doing what, and then we go to our houses. We write our parts, whether it's like by chapter or scene or point of view, and we upload them to Dropbox or email back and forth. It's different every single book, I swear. And then at some point we combine and hopefully it looks a little bit like a book, and we keep going and change what needs to be changed. And then for us, we kind of draft sort of fast and then we revise and revise just so much. Like good books, drafts can be good, but really great books happen in revision.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So I know like some authors have said writing a book is like, they're like your children and you put them out there and all that. And you're not supposed to have a favorite child, but if you could pick your favorite book or your favorite couple out of your book, who would you pick?
So that's actually a really hard question to answer, not only because they do feel a little bit like children, like we're proud of all of them, but I think when you're writing, maybe romance especially, but I think it's true for any genre, you kind of need to be a little bit in love with the one you're working on right now. Because if you're not in love with them, the readers won't be in love with them. So, I mean, it sounds trite and it's probably annoying because you guys can't see this book yet, but we're always in love and our favorite is always the one that we're working on. And that's especially true right now. We just finished the Soulmate Equation. It comes out in May, and we're both still like pretty obsessed with that book because we really love it. And then the one we're working on right now is called, well, we don't have a title yet, but it's basically like Romancing the Stone meets The Hangover.
But the title changes every time Flo sends me a compiled document. It's like adventure, exclamation point, romance, exclamation point, gold, exclamation point.
It's fun, yeah. But so, I mean, I think if I had to pick one of our books that I could only ever open again and read again, it would either be The Soulmate Equation or Love in Other Words or Josh and Hazel. Okay, I picked 3.
I love Josh and Hazel so much.
I think for me, it depends on what mood I'm in. Like I tend to really love, like I like to laugh. So I tend to love our like funny books. So if I just like wanted to laugh, I would probably pick up Honeymooners or Josh and Hazel. Josh and Hazel makes me laugh every single time I pick it up. There's just always something. And what's funny is a lot of times it's like rarely something I wrote. It's usually something Flo wrote. And then I'll start laughing because I remember like the first time that I saw it or.
That's awesome. Hazel might be my favorite fictional character in any book I've ever read.
Hazel.
Because she's like me. I've always been too much, and so I just love her.
Yeah,
I love her.
Yeah.
Okay, so writing romance. Are your husbands super romantic? Do you draw inspiration from them?
I mean, I've been married for 26 years, so I like. So maybe not like at the level in our books.
Our husbands
are levels up to that.
Yeah, I mean, our husbands are very different. They're actually really good friends, but they're very different. Like, my husband, I always sort of joke that he's like part cyborg because he's very logical.
He's a scientist.
He's a biochemist. He's like very rational. He's very hard to ruffle. It's like he's just super steady. But I also love that his love for me is not like calm. It's very like passionate, and he really loves me. And so I think there is something that I've been able to draw from that in the sense that like you give the person that you're in love with, you give them something special that nobody else gets. And so, I think when we try to write a love story, we want to figure out what it is that each of our characters gives to the person they fall in love with that they would never give to anybody else. And so I think both Christina and I have really worked to figure that out for each couple we write.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Okay. So most are romance and comedy, but if you could write any other genre, what would you see yourself writing? I know you have you've touched on some other ones, but.
We actually have an idea for a dark comedy kind of thriller. And we already have a title for it, which it does not happen that way. So we have to figure out, we're going to finish this one. And then
the only time that happened was autobiography. We had that title like the second we started outlining that book.
Yep.
And some are sequels, but are there any that are standalones right now that you all have thought about writing a volume 2 or a sequel to?
I think we both would love to write a book for Fizzy. She's the main character's best friend in the Soulmate Equation, and she's really funny. She's a romance writer. She's speaks her mind. She's super independent. She's very loyal, and she's just a really fun character. So I think we'd love to write a book for Fizzy.
Yep.
Good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are you all big readers? What are you reading now? Favorite authors?
Oh, we're both big readers. You cannot write without reading. You just can't. What am I reading? I'm doing research right now. So I am reading, what is his name that had to cut his own hand off?
Oh, the guy in 127 Hours?
Yeah, Aaron something. Aaron Ralston, Between a Rock and a Hard Place. I'm reading that because our kind of Romancing the Stone book takes place in the southern Utah desert. And then I'm reading a book called Whiteout. And it's funny because a friend told me to read it. And I was reading, it has the same title as another book called Whiteout. But one is one word and one is two. And I was like, I don't see how this is romance, but I'm just going to keep pushing through. And Lo is like, are you reading the like Andriana Anders version? And I was like, no.
Oh, it's too funny. I am listening to In the Garden of Beasts, which is one of my favorite nonfiction books. I found that rereading lately has been good for me because sometimes my brain isn't latching on so well to new books. So I'm re-listening to that. It's by Eric Larson. It's about the ambassador from the U.S. who went over to Berlin during the rise of Hitler. And I just finished 10 Lessons for a Pandemic World by Reed Zakaria. So my reads are really light right now, but I will say I actually finished, we blurbed this one and I just reread it, and it's called Love Songs for Skeptics, and it's by Christina Pisciris, and it's really good, super voicey, and I loved it for romance. It's good.
I'm going to say too, I ordered the special edition of Anna and the French Kiss, and I have it next to my bed. And so I've been sort of like rereading parts of that. It's the book that sort of made us we wanted to write books that made people feel that way.
Great. We're currently reading The Survivors. That's our book of the month this month.
Oh, okay.
So do you guys always pick one from the book of the month?
We did.
The choices, yeah.
Well, most of us get all 5 picks and all their add-ons.
Yeah.
I love you all so much.
Yeah. They have such good choices.
Yeah.
We have the book club too. So our book group will vote on one book, and then that'll be but we end up having discussions like we also picked this time next year, and we're going to meet with Sophie next week.
Oh, awesome.
So
that one's really good.
About that too. And then we have Evie Dunmore. We have her in February. So we're kind of doing whatever they release for February romance, and then we're going to have Bringing Down the Duke in that line too. So we're just kind of all over the place, but we try to stay in that month.
That's great.
I love this.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So we have a couple of questions about holidays.
Yes.
Did the rough drafts have more time loops, or was it just like those big 3? Because I mean, cut out some. You wouldn't want to do this over and over and over again.
Well, this book, more than any other one that we've written, has been so many different things. This book has been probably 3 different books before it came this one. So there for sure were a couple more time loops that we cut. And, we have seen people say they wish there were more. I'm going to say you don't, actually, because we did have them, and it slows everything down, and you don't want to frustrate the reader. Like, there's one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to make the reader mad. Mm-hmm. And so I think, we ended up realizing that 3 was about right for them. But yeah, like the different versions of it were really different, and it was really fun to get this one into its final form.
Yep.
Did you ever have her going with Theo?
Well, the funny thing about that is that in one of the versions, in like the very, very rough early version, the idea is that Theo was the love interest. But as we were writing it, it's like Andrew was like, hello, hello, I'm over here, you know. And when our editor read it, she was like, is she going to end up with Andrew? Because she has like better conversations, you know, there's something there that's not there at all with Theo. And when we went back, we were like, oh my God, that is why we are struggling with this book. And so as soon as we are not those people that are like the characters just talk to us, that we are never like that. But in this case, it was like, oh my God,
Andrew's like demanding to be.
Yeah, like we said, when we write characters, we try to really write the person they will fall in love with, and we did, but we just had them in the wrong places at first. Mm-hmm. So
we have a follow-up question in the chat. How did you choose to write a holiday-themed book? Was that something on your radar, or did it kind of just come naturally?
Yeah, I mean, neither of us has ever been a big holiday romance reader. Like, we'll read them if they're there and if it's recommended to us, but there are a lot of readers in romance who will specifically seek those out, and we were never really that kind of reader. But when we were looking at our calendar a couple of years ago, we realized that this book would come out in October of 2020. It would be an election year. We had no idea that it would be this kind of election year. We had no idea that there would be a pandemic. We didn't have any idea that people would need the escape and the magic quite as much as they did. But we figured, like, hey, election year, everybody's going to be sick of talking about the election. Let's write something really fun and different. And, I think when you are writing a holiday romance, it's sort of the one time that you can play with magic a little bit in contemporary romance. Yeah. Usually you need things to really be grounded in reality and in our world. And I think you get around the winter holidays, those rules don't apply as much. And so we decided to just kind of go for it. And it was super fun. It was actually a really fun book to write. So
that's awesome. I bought it in October as soon as it came out. And then I saved it for December, and then everyone was like, it's going to be a book of the month, and I was like, no, they're already super popular, they're not going to pick their book. And then when they picked you all, I was like, man, I want the book of the month
version. That's great.
Yeah.
Was there any more in the chat questions? Because I can't see the chat.
Not that I see. I have a question though. So your books kind of vary in terms of level of spiciness, I would say. And I wonder is that a conscious decision ahead of time, or does that kind of just like come through in the writing process? Like, I'm finishing up the Beautiful Bastard series, which I am obsessed with. I love that series. I'm on book 10 right now. And like, that is, completely different vibe from like in a holidays.
So I will say the answer to that is both. So we both consciously back a little bit because, just audience wise, we were really limiting ourselves with that level of sexy times, which isn't to say that readers don't love it, because they do, and that it isn't super fun to write, because it is, but we wanted also to be able to make our worlds a little bit bigger and tell slightly bigger stories that weren't necessarily confined to women discovering who they are through sex, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's a great way to live. But I also think that when we write each book, the characters and who they become helps us figure out how steamy it's going to be. So like Josh and Hazel is sexier than the Unhoneymooners. And actually what's funny is when we were writing the Unhoneymooners, our agent came back to us and she was like, I think we need one more humpy scene. It needs like a little bit more sex in it. And we were like, all right. So we why don't we try to write it? It was so awkward. It was like, we felt like intruding on Ethan and all of this moment. They were like, nope, we don't want you in with us. So I think it just characters, and, like, Soulmate Equation is sexier, a lot sexier than, like, the Honey Don't List. And I just totally depends on the book.
Mm-hmm.
I have a funny story about Beautiful Bastard. So I mostly read, but I was having to do some cleaning, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do Beautiful Bastard on audiobook.
I see where this is going already.
They are 7 and just turned 5. And so I had that on speakerphone, and buddy, I quickly had that on my earphone. I was like, oh, that's right out of the gate.
Oh yeah.
And also, speaking of Honey Don't, that was my first book of your all's that I read. And did you get your inspiration from Chip and JoJo?
You know what's funny is that when we first started talking about that book, we were talking to our agent, and they were Hollywood actors, so like 2 huge Hollywood actors who they're like basically their brand was sort of built into their marriage. And when we were talking to her, she was like, you know, you've done Hollywood before, but what if they were like some sort of huge like home improvement gurus or, something like that. And as soon as she said that, we were like, oh my God. Because, we always see these people whose lives look so perfect and you just secretly like wonder if it really is. And when we were first doing it, originally we talked that they were going to have a network, and that was our thing. And then as we were writing, our editor was like, I actually think they have a network coming out. So we had to change that. And then we were together somewhere in some gas station, just like happens in the book. And we look down and there's like a Us magazine or a People magazine, and it has Chip on it talking about like the mistakes he's made. And we were like, oh God. So it wasn't, but it's funny that it like so many people have said that.
Yeah.
So
we can see it. It was not intentional, but it also is kind of funny to us.
Yeah. I mean, because Melly is pretty terrible. I doubt that they are terrible.
I don't think Joanna Gaines is that awful.
I think they're pretty good people.
Yeah.
That's all the questions I have. Susie, Sarah? Is there anything else?
Yeah, I'd love to hear as much as you can tell us about your new book coming out. I know you mentioned it a little bit, but
about it.
So this is the Soulmate Equation. We love this book so much. It's our first like straight to hardcover book. So I should tell you that Lo mentioned that her husband is a scientist. He's a biochemist, but Lo also has a PhD in neuroscience. So one of the things that really kills books and stuff for her is when it's just 100% made up science. So in this book,
although this is 100% made up science.
Okay. So this book is like, let's say that science has found a way to find your soulmate in your DNA. And our main character, Jess, she's our first like single mom. She has a little girl named Juno, who's 7. Is just done with dating, but she meets this guy, and he's talking about, this new company, and her and her best friend decide to do it. And it turns out that she is matched to him and they don't really like each other. But so we had to there are lots of companies that are doing some version of this with like pheromones or, whatever. So it was really fun to listen to Lo and her husband geek out about the science and find a way that it's not true. We fudged it a little bit, but we didn't fudge it so much that it's completely beyond the realm of any possibility. And that was really fun.
I mean, if you think about those kits, like the 23andMe kits where you spit in a vial and you get your whole, genetic background and your heritage information, and you get stuff about like, are you a super taster? Do you smell asparagus in your pee? Like all of the random things they can tell you from your genes. Like, why not be able to match you with somebody through all of these different genetic markers? And so, it was really fun to think about like, well, how would you build that database? Like you would do, personality tests, and you would do emotional screens, and you would talk to people who'd been married happily for decades. You would talk to people who were like super, super attracted to each other. You would do all kinds of evaluations of different kinds of couples to see like what genetic makeup translates into this kind of passion or long-term emotional happiness. And it was just super fun to imagine a world where this was a thing. And so that aside, like the premise was really cool to play with, but you know, we just love Jess. She's very much a relatable character. She felt very real to us. And then River, the scientist in it, is just, I think he's just great. Like, I love them. So it was a really great book to write. We had so much fun.
Yeah, we can't wait to read it. Is there any chance that it could be another book of the month pick?
We really hope so. I mean, it would be great to get that repeat author thing.
Oh my God, yeah. What do
I
we
think
have
it would
to do?
be, I know, right? I think it'd be really great for the audience. So just, have people buy in a holidays from Book of the Month and show them that you guys want that kind of book, and you guys have already been super supportive. So fingers crossed.
Who would you cast as them? As those
Oh man,
characters?
we're so bad at that, honestly. And part of that is because, whenever you're writing, even if you start with a picture of somebody, it always morphs a little bit as they become their own person. And so we joke that River looks like young Keanu Reeves.
Yep.
And so, but really what's important is what you guys imagine. So that's always more fun for us, is to hear who you guys would cast, because you guys, once they're out of our hands, they're yours. These characters become yours. So.
Well, I cast Ryan Gosling to play Bennett in Beautiful Bastard.
I think.
But I was
putting
Josh
that out
Franco.
there.
I was Josh Franco for Beautiful Bastard.
We're fine with any of these.
Yes.
We got a couple more audience questions. One is about in the holidays, or in the book when she is saved by Theo on Main Street. Did you ever consider setting her back to try again after the close miss? Yeah. Does the fact that she stayed say something about her ability to choose our path, even if it's not perfect?
Yeah, I think, we did talk about having her actually go back. But I think at that point, that's when the reader would be like, oh my God, she has to start all over again. And that would be really, I think, sort of mentally exhausting. But also, that is the moment that May starts living really authentically. She realizes that she can't just fix things by covering it up, and that there's not going to be some magical intervention at this point, that she has to start living her life the way she wants it. And so it gets messy, and Andrew maybe doesn't react perfectly, maybe doesn't say things perfectly, but I think at that point, that's when she has to start doing it on her own. So
yeah. And she realized that it wasn't either one of them that was going to make her happy. It was the decision she made.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the man determining, is this going to work? It's okay, I'm quitting my job, I'm living for me, and then things started to fall into place for her.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And we really love that theme in books we write and in books we read, where, you have to be happy with yourself and in your life before you can be happy in love. Love is never going to solve problems. So, and I think for so many of us women readers, we really love those stories where the woman figures out who she is first. And yeah, so it was fun.
I love that. Okay, we have another random question. She says it's super random. She wants to know what your zodiac signs are, because in the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge, you have to find an author that has the same sign as you.
Oh, Virgo, and Christina is a Pisces.
And we are very much those things.
Yes, I am very Virgo.
I am very Pisces.
Oh, that's great.
Well, if we don't have any other audience questions, I think our time is just about up. So we want to thank you both so much for joining us in our group. This is just such an awesome opportunity for us and our members. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us. This was a really good time, you guys, and thank you for supporting Book of the Month. That's such a good thing to do.
Great.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We hope you enjoyed.
And you'll have the playback on our group, right?
Yep. Yes, we recorded this, so we'll be posting it in the group so you can watch the replay if you want. We hope everyone has a wonderful night and wonderful weekend.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Happy reading.